Excellent!
What's up guys, welcome back to Paul's Hardware. This is my first builds video of 2017, and if you've never seen them before, essentially every month I do 3 videos. The first one is a parts lists, where I do a couple builds, show you guys the parts, talk about my choices and why I chose this or didn't choose that or that kind of thing. Second part is when I actually build the system. Third part is a testing and follow-up and sort of seeing how the system performs. So I'm actually running a little bit late already this month because I was at CES for the first 2 weeks of January. It's already a couple weeks into January, so check out that playlist if you want to see any of my CES coverage. Tons of new stuff announced, but actually not a lot of it is available quite yet. If you want to see any of the builds I've done previously, such as the $1,000 build that I did for December, or the Mini ITX builds I did the months before that, or the more budget entry-level systems that I did the months before that, check out my builds playlist, and of course link all of those in this video's description. Now the second part of my builds videos is that I like to have fan interaction. So I actually asked you guys a series of questions from last month, so we're going to talk about the results of that really quick. But first, you should already be voting or checking the vote for next month, because February is coming up soon. What builds do you want to see in February? Link is in the description for this straw poll as well. You guys get to vote and let me know what you feel like seeing. Hopefully we'll have some Zen options coming very soon. But last month I asked some different questions than I typically ask. So for example, I asked, which underrepresented case manufacturer would you like to see in a future build video? This is basically all of the major case manufacturers in a list, apart from Corsair, Fractal Design, and NZXT, because I've worked with all of them pretty recently in the past say the last few months of 2016. So anyway, Fantex was number 1 on the list. I also had Lian Li, Cooler Master Be Quiet, InWin, Thermal Take coming in there as well. Here's the lesser votes down there at the bottom. But anyway, I'm going to try to work in multiple vendors coming up very soon. We're going to be working with Fantex this month. I also asked what rumored product launch in early 2017 you're most excited about. AMD topped the list. Kaby Lake coming in a second. We're going to be doing Kaby Lake builds today. Can't do AMD builds yet with Ryzen because it's not launched yet. And then of course I also asked what should be included with a typical parts list, because usually I just do the hardware, and it seems like most of you are okay with that, 42%. A few more also asked for the PC hardware, operating system, and peripherals, and I do complete builds at times as well. But I will try to point that out pretty clearly at the beginning of the video, either, hey, here's just the hardware for the core computer, or here is the hardware and monitor and accessories, and of course you're going to need an operating system. If I don't include Windows, just check out my Windows 10 for $20 video. It's now more like $30, but you can get a Windows license that's legit, and you can get it fairly inexpensively. Alright, enough exposition. Let's dive right into the first build. I have 2 builds for today. They're both very similar. We're going to start off with an epic RGB build with a Kaby Lake processor and a GTX 1080, because RGB is everywhere. It's matured a little bit, I feel like, after looking at some of the demos they had at CES. And of course, Kaby Lake just launched and is available. And again, I'm not trying to ignore AMD by any stretch, but we can't buy their processors yet, so hopefully Ryzen will come soon. Also, bear in mind, I'm not necessarily explicitly recommending Kaby Lake right here. If you have a Skylake processor, a 6600K, 6700K, the upgrade to Kaby Lake is really not worth it. However, if you're buying a new system right now, and you're looking at, well, Skylake or Kaby Lake, I'd say just buy Kaby Lake. The 7700Ks and 7700Ks and 7600Ks are only about 10 or 20 bucks more than the Skylake counterparts. And for that much difference, I would say just go ahead and get Kaby Lake. They ship at higher clock speeds, and from everything I've heard so far, you should be able to overclock a little bit better with Kaby Lake than you could with Skylake. That said, here's our first build. This is an expensive build. $2,700 is the total price if you were to buy all these parts outright, but I'm dealing with some parts that I already have on hand, so I can actually assemble this, and I also have a $700 SSD in there, which I'll explain in just a moment. But 7700K and a GTX 1080 are the core components here. Let's run down them one at a time. Of course, the 7700K, the newest quad-core on this mainstream platform from Intel. If you want to get a 6-core or an 8-core processor, you got to jump up to the enthusiast level, and that's much more expensive. Anyway, these are selling for about 350 bucks right now, which is could be cheaper, but you can find a 6700K for about $330. Again, for 20 bucks, I would just get the 7700K. If you do find a deal on a 6700K though, then go ahead and jump on it. They still overclock quite well. And you should be just fine with that. One with a high-end cooler, all-in-one liquid cooler, Corsair H100i. It's a pretty much a standby. It's been used many times. Corsair's been continually improving their design. I like the way this looks in the sleeved cabling on the tubing and everything. It has RGB on the actual, this part of it, on the pump block, and you can't control that. This is the only part of this build that you're going to have to control independently or just turn it off, but you can't adjust the RGB lighting on that. Everything else you should be able to wire up and control via the motherboard software, and the Hydro Series H100 IV2 costs around $100, which is a pretty penny to put on top of the price of your CPU, but the second version of this build that I'm going to do afterwards shows you how you can get everything for a lot cheaper if you don't need the maximum performance. Speaking of maximum, and speaking of parts I already have on hand, you might notice up in the corner there I have a Maximus 9 Hero already. This is a really nice board. I really like what ASUS did with it. It comes in at only about $230, so it is part of the ROG series, and even though this picture looks, look how weird and how squished the picture looks over on the left there. Anyway, it's full-size normal ATX, has really nice like kind of brushed metal finishes on the cooling for the VRMs and everything. It has two RGB headers, one in the lower right and one in the top right. Tons of fan headers and connectivity, and it's got a couple M.2 slots on there and a couple nice locations. And I think ASUS did a really good job with this board. And it's even not terribly expensive at only about $230, so that should get you everything you need. Now for the memory, this is a placeholder for now. This is G.Skill Trident X series, a 4x8 gig kick, so 32 gigs of memory. It's going to populate all of the DIMM slots. And the one I actually chose for the build here is sort of a white and silver finish. Look at the massive amount of zoom you get there. It's white and silver, but what they're actually sending me you can't buy yet, which is the RGB version of their Trident Zs, which actually works with the ASUS Aura software, but that's not going to be available for sale for a couple more weeks. I'm expecting to get a really early version of that, so I'll be installing it. But for now, it's the same capacity of memory and the same brand and even the same style with the Trident Z. Let's talk about storage. OCZ I'm working with for this one, so I am going to be using the Tryon 150, which is right here, and I actually have no problem recommending this drive because it's a very solid, very fast, not the fastest SATA drive you can get, but they're using slightly more budget NAND on this, so it's a little bit less expensive, and for that reason you can get the 480 gig version for still $120. And we're expecting NAND prices to go up right now or soon, or they have been creeping up. So still being able to get a 480 gig drive for 120 bucks, I think that's a solid buy. And actually I'm using this in both builds for today. Now here's probably the most controversial one, but I'm throwing it in here anyway. I keep talking about M.2 and how nice it is to have a really fast M.2 NVMe drive. So here's the RD400 1 terabyte, but it's currently priced at $700 right there. So there it is, a 1 terabyte, really fast NVMe drive, and man, you gotta pay for it at this point. So hopefully we're gonna see prices on these come down. I'll fully admit this is not a reasonable part to put in a build like this, which is again why I did the second version of this build that's much more reasonable when it comes to pricing and what goes in there. So 700 bucks for this right now, again, is very expensive. But I have it and I want to test it and see how fast it is and how it works. But that gives me 1.5 terabytes of SSD space in this build, and if you remove that SSD, then the price drops to about $2,000 for this system instead of $2,700-ish dollars. Anyway, I wanted, again, this to be an RGB build, so for that reason, I've gone with an ASUS motherboard and an ASUS graphics card. Now, I've seen lots of the different RGB softwares from motherboard manufacturers. I've worked with a few of them in the past year. They've all been updated. They all have new hardware that works with them. And ASUS was one of the demos I saw at CES that I just thought was like, wow, they really kind of got all this stuff together, especially when you integrate the RGB memory and you can tie it all together. And I like the different effects you can do. They had an RGB lightning storm effect that I thought looked pretty cool. But of course, the RGB, you know, everything working together only really functions if you have like all the same hardware. So ASUS Aura is the family of parts in this graphics card is compatible. And hey, it's only, you know, $630 after mail-in rebate. So for a 1080, not terribly expensive, especially for a nice one by ASUS. And now we have the case. This is the Phanteks Enthoo Evolve. This is the glass one. And again, going with your recommendation from Phanteks, or from who I should work with, Phanteks was recommended. I really like their cases. I have a relationship with them already, so it was very easy to reach out and say, hey, I want to check out the Enthoo Evolve. So they're going to send one of these over. They're also sending their Phanteks RGB strips that should also integrate with the ASUS motherboard. So yeah, and this case has been worked with before, don't get me wrong. I have seen it and checked it out. Kyle has a couple of these now. He has the silver one and the white one. I went with black. partially because I didn't want to use the ones that Kyle had already used, and also because I asked you guys on Twitter yesterday if you're gonna do an RGB build, would you want the case to be black or white? Very, very close between black and white, but I had a little bit of an edge for black there, so that's what I opted to go with. All right, lastly, power supply, EVGA Supernova. I like EVGA power supplies. This one's fully modular. It's the Supernova G3, which is the successor to the G2, and I actually might be building with the G2, but they got the G3 out now, so go ahead and go for it. All black cabling, solid power supplies from EVGA, you know. It's 120 bucks, a little bit more expensive. So there it is. Those are all the parts, and again, if you were to buy all this stuff straight up, your price out of the online retailer you purchased from would be in the $2,700 range, probably closer to $2,800 with mail and rebate. Now, what if you didn't need all this? What if you wanted to build a gaming PC, but you're like, I don't need a 7700K, I don't need a 1080, or at least maybe I want one, but you know, you can get by with a lot less than that. So I was like, what if I take this build, try to still stick to a bit of an RGB theme, still sticking with Kaby Lake because it's new and everything, and the other new stuff isn't out, and give ourselves a more sensible version. So that's build number 2 here, is a more sensible build with the same RGB theme, a lot of the same manufacturers I'm actually using, because I tried to stick with sort of a universal look and feel throughout, but 7600K instead of a 7700K, GTX 1070 instead of a GTX 1080, and all around just parts that I found to be a little bit more sensible when it comes to it. So 1,236 is the price that you're getting right now on this. If you again were to buy it all from the most reasonably priced sellers, so $1,200 to $1,300, depending on whether you're including a Windows license and that sort of thing. So again, the 7600K instead of the 7700K, and you maybe even could shave another 20 or 30 bucks off of this if you found a good deal on a 6600K. But again, all you're really missing out there on there is the hyper-threading, and depending on what game you play, that may or may not be a good thing. For a CPU cooler, I went the Cryo Rig. Look, it's got this is the H7. Look, it's got RGB on the fan, sort of. It's black and white though. It's gonna blend in, and for $35, really good performance. Pretty simple to install. Will work with this socket, and yeah, 35 bucks, which is a lot less than what you pay for the H100 IV2. For the motherboard here, I stuck with ASUS once again, because again, that Aura software is pretty good. I think I want to compare this to like Mystic Light, as well as, I forget what Gigabyte is calling theirs, and maybe do an RGB software comparison thing soon, maybe sometime. But this is the Strix Z270E gaming. There's actually several Strix Z270 boards. This one's kind of in the mid-range, but it does still come with your RGB LED headers. Comes with like the USB 3.1 front panel header. It's very, very slightly less features features, I would say, than you get with the ROG board, but still very solid all around. And yeah, it looks pretty cool. Not quite as aggressive a look, but again, still compatible with the ASUS Aura software. And I think for your Z270 needs, that would match right in there. For memory, I went with the 16 gig kit insteed of 32, because if you're building a gaming system, you probably don't need 32 gigs. You can get by fine with 16. Found this kit for 85 bucks. Again, still G.Skill, and I've used these. Actually, this is the same kit that I have in the Arctic Panther, and they are black. You peel that sticker off, and then you're fine as far as aesthetics go. Next up, for the SSD, I stuck with the same one, the OCZ Trion 150, because again, it is a very good price for a 480 gig SSD. And here I will advise, get this SSD and then find an old mechanical hard drive that you have, say anywhere from the 500 gig to 2 or 3 terabyte range. Most people have something like that lying around. Pair that up with the SSD, and then you'll have your fast storage for your operating system and some games, and you will also have a larger drive for mass storage and backups and that kind of thing. Asus GeForce GTX 1070 8GB card. This is again just the same Strix version of that card that I already showed you, just a 1070. Makes it cheaper by 100 and 200, how much cheaper? Like 200 bucks cheaper. Still has the RGB lighting effects, still a very well designed card. Still gets you, 80 to 90% of the performance of the GTX 1080, depending again what game you're testing. And then for the case, stuck with Fantex here because again they have some nice RGB features integrated. I'm not sure if this one in particular you can wire up directly to the Asus motherboard or not, but this one does have some RGB lighting on it. It does allow you to control that directly on the case, so you could line that up with whatever you have going on internally, and a much more reasonable price. This one's about 70 bucks. Has a nice side panel window. Very well designed case by Fantex. Very positive ratings and reviews from what I've read so far. Finally, power supply, EVGA Supernova NEX. Oh, this is the NEX. I was wrong. Never mind. And I've just realized that I have the wrong power supply in here. EVGA makes some solid power supplies, but don't get the NEX. This is a warning. I've recommended this before, I was corrected, and I sort of purged it from recommending it anymore, but the NEX is not a good series, so don't get it. Get this one instead. This one's semi-modular, but it's a 650 GQ, much better internals, and it's much better rated by the good power supply guys who rate power supplies. And look, it's even the same price. It's just semi-modular instead of fully modular. Don't know why the NEX is even still there, but there it is. And sorry if earlier on I had the wrong link. All of the links in the description will be updated with that power supply rather than the NEX. But there it is, guys. A couple Kaby Lake builds for you, whether you're looking for something that's a lot more blingy and that's a little bit more powerful in the $2,000 price range, or maybe something that's a little bit more reasonable in, say, the $1,200 to $1,300 price range. And of course, both of these builds you could start pulling stuff out of and replacing with slightly less expensive parts and get things a little bit cheaper. So I always recommend, if you guys are interested and want to sort of dive into PC Part Picker and like see what you can work out, feel free to leave those suggestions and other alternative builds in the description, because that's a big reason why I do this and why I do it every month, is because there's always questions about what I should choose, what's going to work with what's going to be more compatible, what's recommended, and that's why I do these videos. And of course, your feedback as well, whether it's via the votes in the straw polls or comments in the videos, are always appreciated by me as well as by other people who are just learning how to do this whole PC building thing. Anyway, guys, thanks again for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful 2017 so far. I have tons and tons of videos planned, so I'm really excited about that, starting with this build that I'm going to be doing next week. So stick around, hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button and all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.